following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, and welcome to 50 Shades of Bullshit. I'm your host, Christine Lalonde, and this is the podcast where we uncover the truth about online dating. Now let's begin. Hey everyone, I'm Christine, and this is Steve.
Hello.
Yay!
And we're say, this is Christine. I'm supposed to say, and this is Steve. So I was just waiting.
Here we are. Whatever. Well, welcome. This is 50 Shades of Bullshit, and we are really happy when everybody comes back. So welcome. Hey, Steve. I'm so happy you're here with me today.
Great.
I got 5 of those things in there. I'm going to work on doing this.
That's good. We'll make it through all of them. I'm pretty sure we have something in store for y'all.
We do. Today we're going to talk about emotionally immature people who show up in a relationship emotionally immature. There was an article that I found that was by Kathy and Ross Petrus, and they wrote an article that said people who are emotionally immature always use these 12 phrases, says these communication experts. So I thought what we could do is kind of go down the line. I've had some experience with some emotionally immature people, and quite frankly, I know I have been one in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you're unsure about how to really communicate properly, or when you've come from you're got trauma in your life, you tend to be very defensive and not quite mature enough emotionally to handle, real life situations with a person. I know that I couldn't before, and so I'm guilty of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure I have been too. And can I say something? I actually, as I read the title, prepping for this conversation today, I began to think, where would one need to stand to assess or evaluate someone's maturity level? Wouldn't that in and of itself be a position of judgment?
Yeah.
And when doing so, aren't you in a immature state?
Yeah, I do think that when it comes to this kind of thing, I think that being aware of the way that somebody communicates with you can be like an indication of whether they could be not in the right place to have those conversations. But I think that it can be a real growing situation for a couple. That if one is significantly seeing this type of behavior, that by getting some kind of communication help or relationship help, I think it can be a stepping stool to grow, don't you? Right?
Absolutely. I actually think that is a mature way of relating to it. I'm curious. So can we actually begin to explore what maturity looks like first?
Absolutely.
So that, what I was saying is, if I'm sitting in judgment of you, I could be doing so from an immature place because I'm wounded or hurt. But the way, and I don't think you intended that when you created this topic today, but there is, like in reference to what you just said, a way of observing that allows us to evaluate something. What is the something? Like maturity is almost it's such an interesting.
Well, maybe evaluating the way that they come back, because let's talk about some of these things that they are talking about, because I think that even though I may not be 100% emotionally mature, I mean, who is? I have a sense of humor of a 12-year-old goddamn boy. So, who says that I'm 100% mature? But I will say that in certain circumstances, when I do have a conversation with somebody, I do see these type of behaviors that's on the list. And I do think that maybe when you're coming, let's just say my situation. Let's just say I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody, telling them how I felt in a way that they did something or didn't do something, and I want to have the conversation about how I'm feeling, and then they get into this kind of place that they're talking about or behaving in the way that this list is talking about. So that I don't think I would be judging them. I think I would be thinking, wait, there are going to be instances that we're going to have to really dive into these things without you being overacting or oversensitive or certain things that are on the list. Is that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And in reference to what you were talking about before, I think the willingness to grow and not just observe the other person and comment about them, but to observe oneself as well in relationship. So I'm not just pointing the finger and saying, you're being immature or you are expressing, we're going to go through this list soon, but you're being something defensive or whatever. That in a way is almost me deflecting and not looking at the we part of relationship.
Yeah, so, I say that again because I want to hear that again.
Yeah, I think there's a way that we must come to our relationships with a willingness to observe both ourselves and the other. Like if we have that space of curiosity and willingness and this desire to grow, then we're not observing the other and blaming them for their immaturity, because that in and of itself is kind of immature. Like I'm just pointing the finger at you and saying, you need to change this.
Well, what if they're not pointing a finger?
Mm-hmm.
What if they're saying, hey, I was hurt by something you did to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And that person freaks the fuck out and starts going blame, 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 point. You're pointing, you're pointing, you're pointing. So how do you deal with the fact that then say me just throws the hands up and goes, okay, you can't have a mature conversation with me about what I'm feeling. I remember having this conversation with you when I made you feel bad, and I took it and talked to you and had a conversation and was mature about hurting your feelings and didn't hurt your feelings continually because of it. But when the person is saying to you, hey, you blew me off and you hurt me, and the things your lack of being nice to me is really kind of throwing me off. And then they go, what? You know what I mean? Okay. Anastasia said, what if you don't realize you're not being mature in the relationship? Well, that's what we're going to talk about.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, like what if what that brings me back to what you just said, though, in response to what you said. There has to be a willingness or an invitation to have the conversation. Like if I come to you and I said, when you did that thing to you, whatever you did, you hurt me. Now I'm just kind of coming at you rather than I felt this way. Are you willing to talk about it?
Right.
To talk about it.
Right, exactly. Well, let's dive into this really quick. We've all dealt with emotionally immature people. They get defensive at the slightest criticism. They constantly deflect blame, and when they do they then try to guilt you into feeling sorry for them. Emotionally immature can be a growing problem, whether it's in your personal or professional life. Communication can be a real struggle. So, number one, it's not my fault. They refuse to take responsibility. These are people who are often don't take responsibilities for their own actions when there's something goes wrong. So what do? They extricate themselves from the situation by immediately stating that they're not to blame. What do you think about, say you, Steve, said to somebody, okay, your behavior hurt my feelings or made me feel like you didn't want to be around me, and they immediately say, not my fault, it's you, you did this, you did that. How do you deal with that kind of situation?
That's a good question, because I can't encounter that much. It really is a outright deflection of the way that I feel and a denial of my experience and my feelings. And I'm lucky I don't have very many people in my life that would just do that. But I think there is a way of saying, of inviting someone into a conversation that might have someone want to deflect, or like drives up someone's own fear. I'm trying to think of when might someone say that who's triggered or
well, I had a conversation with somebody last week, and I said, hey, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling like, maybe this isn't going well, or I'm being ignored or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I had a conversation with somebody and they immediately said, what do you, it's your problem, your feelings. I'm not to blame for how you take how I behave. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Mickey says y'all are talking about regular relationships, right? Not lifestyle relationships, correct? Because in some lifestyle relationships, a little brat or baby girl would be immature. Yes, in the lifestyle, there are brats and baby girls and things like that.
And that's role play. That's role play. Actually a consensual way of engaging, where we agree that you're going to be this way with me, and we are both going to get pleasure from it. Or it's going to be a game that we play. So that's a great way of putting it. But I also want to step back and say that there are times when someone will say something and they're really projecting onto you their own wounding. So there might be times where it's appropriate to say, hey, listen, you're projecting that onto me. That's nothing to do with me. Which is another way of saying that's not my fault. So I love these points that we're going to be talking about today, because there's a way to look at it where, yes, for someone to outright just deflect the way that you feel, that is immature. But there is also a way, let me just finish my sentence. There's also a way of responding to things sometimes when you actually look and say, that actually has nothing to do with me. That is you just kind of projecting your shit onto me. And
here's the thing, though. If you were in a loving relationship and not person A, person B, person B says to A, this is how I'm feeling. Person A says, hey, that's your own bullshit. You're projecting it on me. Now, who's wrong? Here's my thoughts.
Yeah.
A knew that B came from trauma, and that there's going to be times that they're going to have issues. Yeah. A needs to fucking help.
Yeah. Help. Okay. I'm listening.
So B says, you're hurting my feelings. I'm being hurt in this situation. A says, well, let me talk about this with you. What did I do that hurt you? Okay, I see how I could have hurt you. That was not intended that way. How can we work together so that you are feeling more secure in your feelings, so that this doesn't happen again? To me, that is a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's healthy. That's a mature evolution of the conversation. Correct. And just to play devil's advocate here, there can be times when someone's issues keep reoccurring in a relationship, and it's like, listen, you have to stop projecting that onto me. This is not, so I don't want to make blanket statements, and I don't want to diminish what they've written in this article. This is actually really interesting. But I think it's great fuel for conversation.
Misty says, like, when a cheater is guilty and makes you feel like you're the wrong one, you are the one that's wrong. Yes, because
we're going to get to that.
We are definitely going to get to that, because I'm going to say that everything pretty much on this list has happened to me from my ex-husband. He was a narcissist, gaslighter. So almost all of this stuff has happened to me. Like, I literally have had somebody say something shitty to me, and then I say, oh wait, are you maybe projecting that on me? And then they're like, me, that's you, that's your problem, that's your fault. So it happens.
So stay tuned on that one, because we're going to further down the list is gaslighting, that's a great example of gaslighting, when someone turns it around. So we'll come back to that one.
So number 2 is something that used to happen to me with one of my exes. I am a highly sexual person, and I want sex every day. And in my marriage, the only time really to do that with kids was at night when we went to bed, and I would want to have sex. And then I was always the one that was initiating, always the one, and never felt sexy, never felt like he wanted me because he never initiated. And I would then, after a while, start to kind of wait to see if he would. And then he would just roll over and go to sleep. And after a while, I'd say, hey, we need to talk about this. And he would do number 2 to me. Number 2 is, if you hadn't done that, it wouldn't have happened. They blame others for like their problem. Like they don't take responsibilities for their own, common tactics towards how they are treating you. So like in my situation, he'd say to me, well, if you hadn't have said anything, I was going to have sex with you. You just didn't wait long enough. And I'm like, I waited. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then days later, I'd say, hey, I've been waiting. Misty says, what is up with guys not being present with their wives? Yeah, unfortunately, that happens quite often. So what are your thoughts, Steve, on if you hadn't done that, it wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't behave this way?
Well, it's clearly someone who's saying that is someone who's not really taking any responsibility for their own experience in the relationship or their partners. As we were reading it, I was thinking, well, what is maturity? If we're talking about immature, what I think so I'm just kind of riffing here for a moment about what maturity is. I think it's the ability to include multiple points of view in a relationship. It's not just me with you and you with me. It's our shared relationship. It's our shared point of view. It's like together we actually get to look together.
Yes.
At different aspects of our relationship. And if I'm only looking from my point of view, that would be an example of immaturity. If I can actually get over into your world and your experience, then that would be an example of maturity. So here's an example of, this person will do anything to avoid looking at oneself and taking responsibility for their experience. And if I could just add something here, one of the tools that I use all the time, especially when I'm working with couples, is the idea of 100% zero. So if I'm working with a couple, a lot of times people say, oh, relationships are 50-50. And now that's evolved to, oh, relationships are 100-100. Well, I say it's 100% zero. If I'm working with a couple, I'm working with one person, I'm talking to them, that person is 100% responsible for the entirety of the relationship.
Yes.
And then when I turn to their partner, they're 100% responsible for the relationship. The other person, zero. So you get to be 100% responsible for all aspects of it. And only when you stand there can you have any power. You can start to see, well, not just what was my part in this, like all of it is me.
I think that relationships are really a yin and a yang and a give and a take. It's about being responsible enough and caring enough about your partner to understand when they need more effort towards them. And sometimes then they need to have more effort in the situation. It's not ever equal. One or the other is carrying the load at different times. And that's what I think a mature partnership is, realizing that it's a give and take.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to revise my viewpoint. That's like what you said is yin and yang. One is transforming into the other. Sometimes it is 50-50. Sometimes it's 100-100. Sometimes it's 100% zero. So it's being able to navigate that, but from a global perspective of the whole of the relationship.
Yes.
So Yeah. Shall I read the next one?
Yeah, I would love it. It's number 3.
Okay. Number 3, I don't need to explain myself to you. So they avoid accountability. You can almost imagine a little kid saying this one. This phrase is a way for them to avoid any true accountability. So, yeah, I mean, and these 2 and these 3 actually fit together. It's all a way of
I think so too.
Yeah, avoiding looking at what one would normally say my part of it, but like I was saying, like the whole of it. Understanding your perspective, understanding my perspective, understanding the impact that my actions have had on you and us. And I think that's very missing here. And I think that's actually, again, back to the definition of maturity, is actually having an understanding of the impact, good and bad. You know, if I do something nice and you feel great about it, I had an impact on you and I can celebrate that.
I mean, I can't imagine being in, okay, let's just say that you and I are in some form of relationship, friendship, working relationship. Okay. And I say to you, hey, I'd love to talk about this thing that happened or a thing that I'm feeling like may happen because of the way that things are going. And you were to turn to me and say, I don't need to explain myself to you.
Well, you know, it could be like, if I didn't show up today and you called me and said, Steve, what the heck happened? I was counting on you to be there 5 minutes to 4. Where were you? And I'd say, I don't have to explain myself to you. That would be absurd.
I have heard people say these things.
Yeah.
They get very defensive. They have no answer. They have no way to justify or clearly communicate what they did. And they just say, they just don't want to take any responsibility. And they say, I don't need to explain myself to you. I've heard it before. I've heard not only to myself, but to other people. I've heard people say it to other people. And I think, oh, that's just a fucking terrible, shitty thing to say to anybody, regardless.
Yeah. Mickey just said in the chat, how can a relationship grow if people don't talk to or learn from one another? And, you know, I don't know that I would even call that a relationship. If people aren't growing together. So, you know, what is it if we're not growing together and talking together? Well, it's acquaintanceship. You know, we're acquaintances or I don't know. There's some, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Will you do the next one too, Steve? Yeah. Because I'm going to actually copy the next 2 and put them in the chat so you can see
number them. 4. Oh, and I can hear the tone of voice in this. All I'm going to say, you're overreacting. So this is a combination of gaslighting. Oops, just added something to the chat and I can't read. Okay, there we go. This is a combination of gaslighting, trying to make others believe a false reality and shifting the blame again. The message they're sending is, you're the problem, not me. Another toxic phrase in this vein is, you're being too sensitive. Now, I'd imagine that last one comes up a lot when someone is emotional in a relationship or they're really upset and someone is unwilling to deal with the emotional content or the emotional experience that their partner is having or some reaction. They try to say, you're being too sensitive, so that they don't have to feel uncomfortable too.
Right. I think that telling somebody that they're being too sensitive is a really crappy thing to say. I've been guilty of saying it to men when they've been really emotional or upset about something. And I'm in the past, when I was really not understanding how to communicate properly or not really understanding what it means for men to be in tune with both sides of themselves, feminine and masculine. I have said, you're acting super sensitive or you're overreacting or oversensitive. And that's a really crappy thing to say. Everybody who I've ever said it to, I'm terribly sorry. I apologize beyond belief. But I was aware I made changes. I worked on me. I think those are valuable things to do. I think the first step in anything when you're trying to be a better person in a relationship is acknowledging the problem, acknowledging that you may have an issue. And if you do, finding the right person to work on that with. Maybe it takes help,
You're reminding me of, I guess it's a discipline, or a spiritual practice. It's a Hawaiian traditional, and I can't pronounce it. It's something like Oponopono something, and there are 4 statements. I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. We could maybe look it up really quick, but it is a certain traditional Hawaiian spiritual way of being, where it's 4 statements. The first one is, I'm sorry. Second, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah. And it's really, there's a beautiful book about it. And there was one, I believe, someone who, I wish I knew their name, but who was a leading voice in that practice or spiritual concept or way of being. And the thing about it is, it's not just in relationship with another person. It's a relationship with self, relationship with other, and relationship with groups, or a way of being in general life. And it's something that you made me think of when you said something. I was just like, if we could be those 4 statements, like live from, or listen from, or look from those 4 statements. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I think if we broke all 4 down, you look at, I'm sorry, it's not from a place of blame or shame or guilt, but like a place of responsibility and ownership. Please forgive me, actually asking for someone's grace, and then thank you. Thank you for being, whether you forgive me or not, whether, like whatever, just thank you. And I love you. Like there's something, and I think that now that I'm sharing it, oddly, I haven't really taken a deep dive in it, but something really beautiful. I think I'm going to actually explore that some. And if anybody can look it up real quick and tell us.
If you explore that, we should come back and have an actual conversation about those a way to make that really work. I always go into relationships telling people, look, I'm not perfect. I'm trying really hard. Sometimes I'm triggered with PTSD because of my trauma. I've been hurt for a very, very, very long time. I'm 57 and I've only been healing for 3.5 years. So I've had
good work.
54.5 years of pain and trauma. And I come in going, hey, I'm always going to try to listen to you and hear you. Sometimes it's going to be hard for me. If you have patience and love and understanding, we can get through this. If I start going crazy, like, just come put your arms around me and say, just breathe. Let's breathe together. Let's take a moment together, and then let's talk. And if someone can do that with me, they're my king.
Yeah. And it points to the kind of partner you might want to have or look for, is someone who can hold a strong enough container for your, grief, sorrow, pain, wounding from your past, whatever it is. So really someone who's done a good amount of their own work.
Yeah. I think that it has to be somebody who's done a lot of work or willing to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm willing to be there for somebody on their journey too, because supporting each other through that kind of thing seems exciting as well to me. But I do know that none of my relationships worked before I started healing because I just couldn't. I was picking all the wrong people in my life. I was attracting all the wrong things, and it just perpetuated the trauma, perpetuated the pain. And, taking a step back and learning about that and learning what I need to do to heal is, I think, the biggest part of, the whole process for me anyway.
Yeah.
Number 5, people who say, yeah, whatever. I'm guilty of saying whatever. But sometimes it gets to the point where someone will shut the fuck up or have a conversation. They just want to blast their feelings and or bullshit. And then I just like, okay, we're not going to have a conversation. So I guess whatever. I am guilty of this one. Yeah. I guess,
I can
it's
see
not that I want to shut it down.
Yeah. I could see that there's a mature way to complete a conversation when it's not going somewhere. And this is not it.
No, it's not. I'm not guilty of doing it as much now. Yeah. I don't know if I say whatever anymore because I haven't been. No, actually, I had a situation with somebody recently and I didn't say whatever.
What do you see as some ways that you could actually complete a conversation when it's not going well, even if it's pausing it and revisit? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd say, I think that I could think to say, I hear you. I need to process it. Yep. I need to really process what I'm hearing from you and step back from how I'm feeling and look at it from a distance. And I think that if I had time to process it, that we could come back together if you can be patient to let me, cycle this through my head. I think that is how I've been trying to do that instead of just going, whatever, fine, whatever.
Peace out.
Peace. I have said that.
I'm out.
Peace it.
I was even thinking of professional relationships where you could acknowledge, hey, listen, let's pause this conversation and circle back.
Right.
Once we've had a time to think about this and kind of talk, go over this and maybe come back to this. Or, hey, I know this is heated. Let's cool down a little bit and set this aside and maybe come back to this. So
yeah. I really love number 6 because this one is not great. This is one of the biggest ones of all, I think. I think this is the worst one. This is gaslighting. And a lot of people tend to say when they're gaslighting, what are you talking about? I never said that. And for a fact that they did. And they gaslight you about it. And when someone says something like this, typically they're trying to evade responsibility and make you think that something else happened than what it actually did. And I think there are a lot of people that are guilty of gaslighting. What are your thoughts on dealing with a situation where you're being gaslit?
It kind of brings me back to what we just talked about. It's like, hey, listen, we need to pause this conversation because this is not working. If you're not willing to have this conversation right now, we can set aside and revisit this. Like somebody needs to step up and be the mature person in the conversation. If someone drops that bomb, if somebody's like, well, what are you talking about? And maybe it's even like, wow, I need to reevaluate whether I want to be in a relationship with you. If I can't rely on you to actually have a discussion when we have a disagreement or something like that. So,
yeah. Well, I think 7 ties into 6 because it's pretty much the same thing. It's your problem, not mine. I think that is, dismissing somebody. It's the same way as number 6. A lot of these have been divided weirdly. And I think that those kind of go together.
Yeah. And circling back to projection, which happens all the time in a relationship. A mature person would have room for someone's projections. It's like, okay, I think that you're projecting that onto me. I don't know that that's my issue, but I'm willing to be here with you in the frustration or the uncomfortableness and talk to you about it. And, back to what I commented about earlier, at a certain point, if it keeps reoccurring, sometimes, figuratively bonking someone over the head and saying, stop projecting on me. That's your shit. Sometimes that's appropriate. And I don't necessarily think that's immature if it keeps showing up like you're blaming me for something that has nothing to do with me. And that can happen too. And in that case, it's the person who's complaining or projecting. They're the one who's revisiting an immature place.
What if, though,
Mm-hmm.
devil's advocate, the person who's saying, hey, this is happening, and they're coming at it from here, up here, and the person who's receiving it receives it as something completely opposite. Their mind took it another way, because we all know that we've been proved a million times that people hear things differently and people perceive things differently. What if the person who's being said to says, you know, hey, this is happening, and they're like, wait, you're just projecting on me, but the person's not projecting. They're saying it in a place of this, and they're seeing it in a place of that. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of it can be miscommunication.
Yeah.
Everybody hears and sees things different. You know, that dress that was blue and black, and some people saw it as like tan and black, and then one would hear Laurel and one would hear the other word. It's people hear and see things differently, perceive things differently. You are going to see a situation from your experience, and I'm going to see a situation from my experience, and I'm going to perceive it differently than you. And it's, I think, two people coming together that says, hey, I perceived it like this. The other one is, I perceived it like that, and figure out how they can meet in the middle to maybe not get into that situation again, or how to handle the situation better the next time.
Yeah. You know, I think that's the power of having a third in the conversation, which is, you know, whether it's a couples counselor or a coach or a friend who can actually be an outside observer who's not impacted by something that's coming up. And that could be very powerful. You know, I find that I really had to learn how to not take sides when I was doing work with couples, that I was truly a third observer who could project things or reflect things back to each of them. And I want to highlight something, because I've been leading a restorative justice training, and it's more for professional relationships. However, there's something that we were talking about this past week of higher mind, lower mind, that when I am in my higher mind, I am exhibiting my best qualities of communication and thoughtfulness and all of these qualities of my best self. And I'm likely to have a lot more, and that is what we could say, higher mind is maturity, lower mind is immaturity. So when I am in that place, I have a lot more freedom to listen and respond rather than react. When I am in my lower mind, I am, you know, likely to react and be any one of these immature responses. And I think being able to recognize that, you can actually see that there is room for both.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there is room for both.
Yeah, because we are not always our best selves.
I don't think we're always our best selves. And we'd like to think that we are, but on the daily, I walk out the house thinking I'm at my best self, and then 20 minutes later, something happens and I'm feeling not my best self.
Yeah, you're flipping off people in traffic, right?
Yeah, I'm like jamming in my car. I'm like fucking dancing. I'm having a good time. Someone cuts me off, and I'm like, fuck you.
And all of a sudden, how quickly we turn, right?
You never know. So I just want to cruise through these last ones. 8 and 9 pretty much go together again. You're making such a big deal out of nothing, and you're talking about the past. I think that a lot of times both are invalidating what the person is feeling, and accuse people of bringing up something that is maybe their mistakes and harping on it. You know, there is a time where someone has to forgive and move past things, and if you can't, then then that may be your problem, to where you have to decide if that's something you want to stay with.
Yeah, and this brings to mind something that I see in relationships a lot, which is scorekeeping. You know, where someone will use something unrelated to this issue that we might be talking about, that happened yesterday, 3 weeks ago, 10 years ago, and they pull it out to avoid actually dealing with what's coming up because they feel some sort of shame or guilt.
Yes.
So, well, you did this 10 years, whatever. So scorekeeping is a really way of bringing your immaturity out.
Yeah, I think that a little too often, when someone's trying to be in a relationship after some major damage has been done, whether it's been infidelity or whatever, maybe the person kind of emotionally or mentally left the relationship and now they've decided they want to try to save it. Scorekeeping can be a real big problem.
Yeah.
And I think that with that, you have to either really learn how to completely let it go and go forward in the relationship fresh and new. Or if you can't let it go, you have to walk away from that because it's never going to be good for you or the person you're with.
Yeah. I see this a lot with infidelity, when I'm working with couples where someone, and I really work hard to take the charge out of some of the language that is used in the conversation. Because what infidelity is it's a broken agreement. If we call it cheating, you say cheating, that's not got a ton of charge to it. And I have lots of room for that when people are upset. But what it is it's a broken agreement. And unless we can get to what the agreement was and how it was broken, we can't actually look at, okay, this is the agreement that I broke. Yeah. Then people are going to deflect and blame and scorekeep. And then use that to punish their partner. So if you and I were in a relationship and you broke an agreement, whether it was sleeping with someone else or anything, unless we address it, then I could punish you with that and keep saying, well, yeah, you cheated or you did this. And that never works and will never work. If that's kind of scorekeeping if you're going to keep this little
tally in the back,
well, you did it to me, then that will never work.
When there was infidelity in my marriage, I knew immediately I couldn't get past it. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe that he had walked away from the other relationship at all. And I was right. He left and went to her and they got married, which is fine. Good for them. I'm happy for them. I really am.
But it's an example of your trust. You never were able to give trust. And it's as much an issue of whatever was going on with him as well as with you, because trust is not something someone can earn. It has to be given. For sure they could exhibit behaviors that have them seem trustworthy,
right?
But there's no guarantees.
No.
And trust is a gift that you give others.
We don't have much time left. Let's do number 10, 11, and 12. We're the last ones. I was just joking is not a good thing. A lot of people use this passive aggressive kind of behavior to avoid taking responsibility for what they say. Like someone will say something and then they'll realize that it really hurt them. And they're like, I was just joking. Well, they really weren't. That just joking is all bullshit. It's 100% bullshit. If someone says I was just joking and I'm guilty of it, I say things sometimes really do meaning it as a joke and then realizing, ooh, that was very insensitive. That was not nice. That was not something that was appropriate. It hurt that person. And then I find myself in the past saying, oh, I was joking. And then I realize, oh, no, I can't. That's terrible. And I've come back to say, okay, I really meant it as a joke, and I realized it was fucking bad. And I now do not mean it as a joke. It does mean something to me, and maybe we should address it because I did not mean that as bad as it came across. So I do try to make that difference. I think that people use that as too much of a crutch.
Yeah. Number 11 is a big one. You always or you never. Always never, not just always never statements, but always never thinking. It puts us in a position of powerlessness.
Yes.
Yeah. And then shall we do number 12 real quick?
Yeah, let's do 12.
Yeah, but everyone does it. I don't know that there's much we need to say about that, because it really is avoiding responsibility by saying, well, everybody does it.
Yeah, that's just justifying something that they
Yeah,
want to do
yeah.
that they really shouldn't be. It's, of course, they're trying to be blameless again.
Yeah.
They've maybe done something wrong and they know it, and they're like, but it's like a guy or a girl going to a bachelorette party, fucking around, and then coming back going, I'm sorry, but everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
Crazy.
not good. I think that mainly the take on this whole, emotional immature kind of conversation today is really either evaluating whether the relationship works for you in a way that you're willing to accept behaviors, but not accept them as they're going to continue, but accept them as they're an issue. Let's address them and let's work on them together. Or you see them as a problem, you can't get past it, and you move out of that relationship and work towards bettering yourself to another relationship that could meet those needs.
Yeah. And I'm noticing one of the phrases that's encountering a lot in people who are doing some good healing work is instead of calling someone out, calling them into conversation, inviting them into conversation. So calling out is kind of an aggressive way of blaming someone for something they did or didn't do. Calling in has, it's nuanced and it's subtle, but it is a way to say, hey, we need to sit down and have a conversation about this because I'm feeling hurt or upset or something. And that's becoming not a new phrase, but a way of engaging in conversation rather than blame.
I also think that relationships, when you're having conversation where the person is perceiving it differently than what you're meaning, like let's just say with my conversation I had with my friend, I said, hey, this behavior is hurting me. They said, you're just pointing fingers at me and I'm not cool with it. You're just blaming me. And I actually did not come in it that way at all. But having some space since the conversation, I can see how my friend could have perceived it that way. It got too heated. Neither one of us wanted to listen to the other. And it frustrated me that I was trying to say, hey, wait, this is not how I meant it. And that my friend didn't want to hear it that way at all. And now that I've walked away from the conversation, I can kind of see their point of view, and I would approach it differently now, I think. And taking a moment to understand each other and then coming back. I think coming back is really important. Not just being avoidant and running away and not having the conversation. I think time away is good to come back. If you're not seeing the other person's point of view, or you're not seeing that maybe you are responsible for some of it, then I think there's a problem.
Yeah. I always recognize when things are kind of zoomed in and, myopic, and I'm focused on some issue that I'm upset about. It's like, okay, wait a minute. I need to zoom out a little bit, slow down time, and take a breath, because, this isn't the end of the world. And we are both adults and we can actually have a conversation in pretty much any and all relationships that I have.
I love that. I think communication is such a beautiful thing. People take communication as such a negative thing sometimes, or such a hard thing to do. I really think it's just all about stopping and trying to perceive what the other person thinks and feels. And if you can open your heart to that, it doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong. It just means there's a different perspective, that we can all come at this in different angles and just give grace to each other. Give grace to other people.
Yeah. And sometimes that's not just in the form of verbal communication. Sometimes it's like, with a child, and you could see this a lot. Someone's throwing a tantrum, you just put your arms around them and they melt, because what they really wanted is feel a sense of security beyond communicating. Verbally, it's really in the being held. So
I love
we
it.
can do with each other as adults too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you, Steve, for being here with me today.
Thank you.
This was a wonderful conversation. I truly appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I love being here. Thank you for having me.
Me too. All of our guests I call y'all guests, your listeners who participate, who come and, give your comments and ask questions. It's beautiful. It's the greatest part of my week. I absolutely love it. Thank you, everybody, for being here every week. Please come back next week, same time, same place. And until then, let's just keep this shit real.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends, like and follow us on Instagram at 50 Shades of _bullshit and Facebook at 50 Shades of Bullshit. Thanks so much for listening, and we really hope to see you again next week.